Okay, thanks. I really appreciate you all letting me do this. I know you didn't have to do this. And let me just start off by saying, if you like my appearance, my dad has a saying, never be ashamed of hard work. So, but the problem is when you're running for election, you started a new apartment building, and you got a 6-year-old. I'm not ashamed of it, but I'd like a little bit off my plate right now. So I got my work pants and my work shirt on, but I did have a collared shirt. And if I'd have known there were going to be so many recognitions, I could have had my wife bring me a pair of pants too, but that's all right. So just I thought what I'd do, because I don't want to take advantage of this situation. So I know most of you. I am James Phillips. I'm running for re-election this year. I've served the last 5 years. I've been on the board at the same time as the mayor, and I just am running again because I want to continue to serve Kingsport. I love Kingsport. It's my city. I was born here, grew up here, moved away for a couple years. Went to college at UT, and then moved away to Greenville, South Carolina for a few years for my job. And then I came back, and we're now raising our daughter here. She goes to Washington Elementary. Lost both her front teeth in the last 2 days, so we're really having trouble with our T's right now. But and that's a little bit about me. I'm passionate about a lot of things. I'm very passionate about. I'm president of Home Builders Association right now, so I'm passionate about housing. I'm passionate about education for our students, not just in K through 12, but after that as well with our TCATs in Northeast State and those programs. And I'm passionate about Kingsport. And so I thought I would just tell you what I think are 3 of the bigger things that are going on right now. And then if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. And I'll move on and let you get with the regular program. So for me, I think this is very important. You know, everybody's biggest issues are different. You know, if you live on a street that has 1,000 potholes in it, paving is your biggest issue. But overall, I think for the city, 3 of our biggest issues right now, and I don't think they're necessarily issues. I think that they are things that we're working on. And so those are the dental clinic, which I know most of you all probably know about. I truly believe, and I've heard the mayor say, and I firmly agree, that the dental clinic is one of the most important things to happen to this city in decades. And we have got to fully support that thing. And we're through phase 1 right now. That $6.5 million from the state of Tennessee will get us mostly through phase 2. But what we have already got to be focusing on is phase 3. We have got to be prepared to make this the second 4-year dental college in the state of Tennessee. And then I think education, as I mentioned, I'm super passionate about education, and we've got to continue on that, because I think when it comes to education and economic development, which are 2 of the things that drives the city, you know, when we have businesses looking to locate here, or when we have businesses looking to expand, if we have an educated workforce and a drug-free workforce, then businesses are going to choose to locate here, and our businesses are going to choose to expand. And so that's why I think education is so important, and that's why I think, you know, getting our students straight into work-based learning, having them go to this middle college where they can graduate Dobbins-Bennett already with a degree or a certificate in one of these programs. I think that is extremely important, and I think that it's something we need to be working on. And then the third thing that I think we are, I hope it's public news now, but if it's not, I'm going to break the news here. Don't tell Chris McCarthy since he's not here. But they closed on the Brickyard property yesterday. So I think that Brickyard development is one of the most important things going on right now, because there's no other city in Northeast Tennessee, and I would venture to guess there's probably not a lot of cities in the United States of America that have 75 acres that they have in their downtown. And so because of that, we're going to be able to put 450 new residences right in our downtown, walking trails, biking trails. It's going to tie in with Domtar Park, and the next phase of something that we're going to do is a Cement Hill project. And so that's going to tie all that into our downtown. And a stat that I always like to throw at people is before Town Park Lofts opened, there were only 75 people that lived in our downtown. And that's why I believe that our businesses, number one, didn't want to stay open after 5 o'clock and sometimes struggled downtown, because you need people living down here, not just working down here, to help them survive. And so dropping 450 new residences in downtown is going to be a big, big difference. And I'll just say, you know, that's not to say that obviously paving childcare is important. The city can find ways to help with that. There's lots of things that are important, and we have to look at all of those things. But those are just three that I think are super important. And if I have any time, I'll be happy to answer any questions, but I'll just end it there because I want to be respectful of you all.
This is, I believe, the 22nd time that General McCorkle has spoken to this group. I think the first time was in 2002 when we first met. He's a lot blonder today than he was back in 2002. And I also want to recognize Colonel Miles, who had a lot more hair back then also. But as you know, he grew up in Harriman, Tennessee. He got his undergraduate degree from East Tennessee State University, and later on got a graduate degree from Pepperdine University in Los Angeles. Now, he entered the Marine Corps in 1966 and retired on 1 October 2001. That's 35 years. Sounds like a long time, but he really has crammed an awful lot into that 35 years. He became a Navy aviator in 1969, deployed to Vietnam, flew 1,500 combat missions while he was there. He was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, actually two of them, the Purple Heart, the Air Medal with Single Mission Award, and 76 Strike Flight Awards, the Navy Commendation Medal with the Combat V, Navy Achievement Medal. And he also acquired the call sign Assassin. Now, as a general officer, he had three major commands. The last one was the 3rd Marine Air Wing as a Marine Corps Air Station in El Toro, California. And he was responsible for over 17,000 Marines and sailors. As I said, he retired in 2001 and was awarded the Distinguished Service Medal at that time. And by the way, he also wears 4 Legion of Merits. After retiring, he began a second career, and he served on a number of boards for defense aerospace companies. He's chairman of Atlas Air Worldwide Holdings. It's harder to say than one might imagine. And was on the board of a number of other companies such as Lord's, such as Rolls-Royce North America. He was president of Jura Corporation and also president of Votac Corporation. He is also a Golden Eagle and has been inducted into the Tennessee Aviation Hall of Fame. He also is inducted into the ETSU USA Hall of Fame. Now, he's married to Kathy Schwartz. They were married in June 1966. And as he says, she's his saving grace. They live in Gray with their dog, Murphy.
I would thank the young Admiral, and for all of you that have heard this bio 37 times, I noticed 2 in the back threw up already, and I apologize to you guys, but the Admiral wanted a couple of other folks to know. I did make a donation to Kiwanis because I think this is a great organization, and they said, who should this donation be in honor of? And I said, any of the Kiwanis members except Admiral McKinley. Now I met John 22 or 23 years ago, I think, when he was on the airport board of directors, and there were 3 individuals that wanted to do an air show here, and we did work it out with the Blue Angels, and it was difficult, and they said, okay, we're going to do this every 2 years, and I thought this will be the second coming of Christ, and we haven't done one since. So I'm getting my Bible close to me. But this is a great group, and I wonder each time when I come, what can I say to you guys that I haven't said before? But I'm a pretty candid little guy, and to see individuals like our young Air Force general and a kid that his father would make him come and stand attention with his sister every night before they went to bed. And he always told me what a terrible father he was. And he retired as a major in the Marine Corps. And his son, that little kid who I thought, I'm not sure what he'll ever do. Well, he's now a 3-star general in the Air Force and C-130 or C-17 pilot. And his name is Kosinski. I don't know if you've ever heard of him there, General. So you look pretty young. Are you in your 80s now, since you don't know these guys? 85. So I am going to talk to you today a little bit about our military and, as John says, world affairs. And I think we're kind of sheltered here in a lot of ways because of, I sure would hate to live in Washington, D.C. now. And when you talk about Keenesport and how prices on houses and everything have gone up, I bought my first house right outside of D.C. For $96,000 and new construction, brand new. And it was around 2,800 square feet and brick, and in Fairfax, Virginia. I sold it 4 years later for $164,000. And I thought, I can tell any of you how to do a real estate business. I came back 5 years later and it had sold for $860,000. So I've been trying to do a refresher in real estate since then, but I do not see our youth lives today, and even in this area, and it's just going to become extremely expensive. And I think houses here in another 30 years are going to be $2 million a piece for a 1,500 square foot house. And right now it's 600,000 if it's new construction, if you can find anybody doing that. So when you look at our military and all the folks that are in the Pentagon, a lot of these guys were buying places 40 or 50 miles out, particularly even majors or captains or lieutenants, and the sergeants and corporals were going out 60 miles. So now our gas is $4 up there when you look at it. And so now they're paying double what they were for gas. And I don't see how they get by. But the thing that I've said 100 times before on our young people coming into the military, and we're having a really tough time in most of the services recruiting these guys. And another reason I come to organizations like this and talk to the young guys and tell them what a great deal it is. I never had any intention of joining the military nor staying. And when I joined the Marine Corps, as I've told most of you that you've heard before, I'd never been to an airport to include Tri-Cities because I didn't have a car and had never been out here. And I did get to fly 65 different types of airplanes in general. One of them was not the C-17, but at one of our outlying fields there at Cherry Point, I got to back that sucker up 100 yards, which you can do, with reverse thrust. And I said, what if we put it in drive? And there immediately was a gun at my head. So I never got to fly it in the air, but I did get to fly the U-2, and the F-15 was the last tactical jet that I flew in Israel. So the Air Force does have some great airplanes too. Our privates, sergeants, staff sergeants, you couldn't find any better in the world. And I know when the heads of Russia have been over several times, and they had a sergeant come in and talk to individuals like Khrushchev and so on and so forth. And they went back and their aides told them that it was a lieutenant colonel in a sergeant's uniform, because they couldn't believe how smart our sergeants were. And that's true in everything that they do. And somebody just wrote me an email, and they were talking about another individual, not me, but it was probably Miles that they were talking about, our young colonel here, who I think has been a mentor to me and other individuals. And of course, he was a Marine and still is forever here. But I saw the word woke in a couple of emails, and they said nobody should use that term, you know, it's been used too much. And I've looked at our military, and the senior military officers, I really can say that over the last 10 or 12 years, and I could be quoted on that, and I was very careful not to go back 20 years there, General. It's been a decline in gunfighters, in Fred McCorkle's opinion. And there should be a gunfighter, you know, that's that, as a Marine say, run to the fire. And when somebody shoots at you, and just about all the foreign countries, they feel that way. If we're unleashed on somebody, then they're in trouble with the young guys. And we don't leave people behind, and we don't leave equipment behind and stuff like that. And I'm very candid in saying that, but what we left in Afghanistan makes them a bigger Air Force than the whole country of Australia, if anybody don't know that. And I'm talking about aircraft, not talking about the millions of dollars or whatever. So from a guy who was in Vietnam, and I'm assuming that we don't have any World War II guys here, and since I'm talking to the Kiwanis guys here, and I can see a couple of folks that are kind of nodding off. The first speech that I ever gave in the Marine Corps was as a major, and I get up and they've got 10 or 12 World War I guys there and about 40 World War II guys. And I look out and they've just handed me the microphone, and 2/3 of them are asleep. And I said, well, Colonel Miles, that concludes my speech. If there are any questions. And Colonel Miles stands up and he says, Sonny, that's the best damn speech we've ever heard. And that is a true story, by the way. And but our leadership, we need to do something about it, and to include in Congress. And somebody talked to me about Phil Rowe, and I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. Those guys took care of me, and I used to say, nobody in the Pentagon ever gave Fred McCorkle 1 penny. And one Christmas Eve, I had this Democrat congressman call me and said, Fred, how much money could you use as a Christmas gift? And I said, me personally, sir. And it wasn't for me, it was for the Marine Corps, of course. And I said, $1 billion. And he said, $1 billion? And I said, yes. And he said, well, do you know what you would spend it on? I said, I've got the list right here. And I gave him the list. And this was at 6 o'clock at night on Christmas Eve. And the Navy absolutely went nuts the next day because they all went home at 2 o'clock. And the Army and Air Force didn't care because their budgets were their own budgets, and the naval budget was the same. They said, why the hell did this guy call you? And I said, I was probably number 8 or 9 on the list, but I got $1 billion from the Democratic Party, not from the Republicans, even though they had to vote together. And I would go in and I would say, on the Hill, and actually Congressman Hunter, who was the old Congressman Hunter from California, and I said, sir, I'm here and we're going down and see a senator who was a very senior senator, and I need $13 million by the end of the day, and which is like pennies in Washington, D.C., you know, but it was a lot of money for me for something to do with command and control. And this is what folks can do if they have the friendship. And this is the same way here, you know, with Pat as a mayor. If he don't like you, he isn't going to let you have your yard cut by the city. But but if he does, then he can even pay for your dinner sometime. But so anyway, I said, well, Senator Miles, I really need this money, and I know you're really tied up. And he said, Fred, let me show you the pictures up here of when I was a lieutenant in the Marine Corps, and I was an ensign in the Navy, which he was. He was also married to Elizabeth Taylor, by the way. And then he's showing me another picture and another picture, and I'm saying, sir, you really got to look at this brief. And his aide, senior aide, was a guy named Too Tall McKenzie, and because he was about 6'5", and he was a naval aviator. And he's waving at the door, and he said, time's up, General. And he said, how much money was it you needed, General McCorkle? I'm actually was a lieutenant general, and I said, just $13 million. And he said, Too Tall, write General McCorkle a check for $13 million. And I'm thinking, this is a way to do these briefs, you know, let them show you all their pictures, and they think you're a nice guy, and then they end up taking care of you. But Congress is, we don't have a lot of military folks that have served up there. And when all of you folks in here were kids, and there are a couple of kids here, which, what are you, 45 or 50? And yeah, and that's still a kid to most of us. But when we were kids, there wasn't a big difference, and they had fights and everything else. But I can go back and see President Reagan sitting with his biggest critics when they're doing plays in Washington, D.C. or whatever. And now, if Miles and I are on different teams, we don't even talk to each other. And I don't have a clue with most of my friends. I've got a pretty good guess whether they're a Democrat or Republican, because I don't care. And I don't want to talk about politics or religion, because you're going to have a fight on your hands or whatever else, you know, and you try to make a happy median in there, and we don't do that anymore in Washington. And if somebody don't like you, they try to burn your house down or whatever else. And it's like, to me, Israel being on the Gaza Strip, and I was over there a couple of times before the Gaza Strip went to the Palestinians, and you could drive down the beach, and I think I've said this before, and if I haven't, then you should remember it, because beautiful, beautiful waters out there and everything else, and I'm in a Humvee with the glass this big with holes on each side where you could stick out a M16 or whatever. But it's there, and they've got these little naked kids, 2 and 3 years old, or other kids running around, you know, half clothed. And I'm thinking, if this is me and Miles, and excuse me for using you, if you weren't here, then I would use John McKinley as a thing. And I could say, we hate each other. So you build all the Marriott you want, and I'll build all the Hyatt Regencies or whatever, and we'll both be rich. And they don't do it because of hatred. And then if you look at Iran, who we've given a hell of a lot of money and everything else. And Sharon once told me from Israel when he was alive, he said, and I was sitting directly across from him because I was a very, very lucky person. And we bought this guy, by the way, for those of you that saw him on television before his stroke or way back when, we bought him a 5X Gensa jacket, the Jewish Institute for National Security Affairs, and he couldn't get it on. And I'm thinking, Jesus, people on television look 20 pounds heavier. This guy looks 100 pounds lighter than what he really was. And so he was telling 6 of us, here's how many Israelis were killed last year, by the Palestinians. And I said, and I'm a pretty hardcore guy. It makes me sound like I'm very liberal, but I said, sir, may I ask how many Palestinians were killed? And he said, I don't care. And I said, I thought that would be your answer. And he said, let me ask you something, McCorkle, and probably call me General, may have called me dirtbag, I'm not sure. But he said, let me ask you a question. He said, if no matter what we give the Palestinians, the Golden Heights, the Gaza Strip, whatever, are they still going to hate us? And I said, yes, sir, they probably are. And he said, then if your enemy hates you anyway, no matter what you do, why shouldn't your enemy fear you more than they hate you? And I think that, ladies and gentlemen, is what the United States should be. That, like Teddy Roosevelt, if you don't want to talk about anybody close by, speak softly and carry a big stick type deal. And the U.S., that's what saves our young men and young women. And today, the World War II and all the folks that were in Vietnam with me, and I was dumber than an empty Coke can. Dumber than an empty Coke can in Vietnam. But I knew that we could win the war in Vietnam in 6 months. And we had just started to change. And you know that our Secretary of Defense and our President gave the North Vietnamese the targets that we were going to hit the next day so that they could, quote, get their people out. And I know at least 50 prisoners of war, most of them dead now, that were taken because instead of getting their people out, they moved their anti-aircraft guns in. And that, ladies and gentlemen, to me, and if you got a recording to send it to the CIA or somebody, that's treason. And anybody that disagrees with that, I'll be happy to discuss it with you. Okay, our weapons are better than anybody's anywhere. And no matter what the Chinese say or anybody else says about weapons, I said earlier in World War I, we were lucky if we could hit a city. In World War II, we were lucky if we could hit a block. And in Vietnam, we often said, and no dispersion to any F-4 pilots over there, that 2020 was not an Air Force or Marines or Navies. We all flew F-4s. It wasn't their vision, it was their bombing score. By it being 100 over 100, because we just didn't have the technology to do that. Well, today, we can shoot from any of our services, to include the Army with their Apaches or whatever, and you can take the fur off of a fly's wings. I used to say off of a fly's rear end, through a window, and that's how good we are. Now, having said that, if you go the other route, how could you not have an overhead, which we have here in Keenesport, and if Admiral McKinley turns into a bad guy and he's up on this roof and he unleashes a bunch of roaches, we can see every roach with the infrared. but we can't see somebody on a steep roof crawling up to shoot somebody. That's so how far does politics go one way or the other? And I don't know. It's when you look at from President Kennedy to President Lincoln and yada, yada, yada down the line, and all of our Democrats or Republicans that somebody tried to take their life, I'm saying, was it a failure or was it just our world being run by idiots that somebody don't do something, to take care of business, whether it's in war or whether it's in peace. And with the couple of minutes that we got left, I'll take any questions from you